US President Donald Trump has told Iranian protesters help is on its way, just hours before he meets senior officials to discuss how Washington will deal with the situation. In a social media post, he said, Iranian patriots keep protesting and to take over Iranian institutions. In the post, he says, save the names of the killers and abusers, they will pay a big price. I have cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. He signs off with MIGA, which means Make Iran Great Again. His comments come as UN officials say the death toll from protests is in the hundreds. Protests have been taking place since late December, sparked by a worsening economic crisis. Iran has faced decades of crippling sanctions, but demonstrators, they say government corruption and mismanagement has made the crisis even worse.
Killing of peaceful demonstrators must stop. The labelling of protesters as terrorists to justify violence against them is unacceptable. We urge the Iranian authorities to halt immediately all forms of violence and repression against peaceful protesters and to restore full access to the internet and telecommunications services. The High Commissioner stresses that Iranians have the right to demonstrate peacefully. Their grievances need to be heard and addressed and not instrumentalized by anyone.
Tawheed Asadi is standing by in Tehran. But first, let's go over to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. So, Kimberly, help is on its way, he says. What does that mean?
Well, what one presumes it means, based on the briefing that is taking place at the White House, amongst the attendees will be not only Donald Trump, but his national security team, including the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the chair of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane. What we know is that help could come in a number of different forms, and that is what is being discussed at this classified briefing. We know that there is, of course, the military option that the White House press secretary just a day ago said is always on the table. But we also know that that could take a variety of forms. It could be a cyber attack. It could be an airstrike. It could even be a psychological operation. So we presume once again that, based on the statements coming out of the White House, that this is still these are still options that are being considered. The question becomes when the president will make his decision. He just left the White House on Marine One to make a speech in Detroit about economic issues. He did not speak about Iran when he spoke to reporters, sticking strictly to the message of the day with regard to the economy. And so we expect that we could hear more from the president following that speech in the coming hours. And also, we know that he is continuing to weigh those options. As he pointed out, the White House believes that he is his best messenger, Truth Social being the way he likes to communicate directly, in this case to the protesters, saying that the United States is standing with them. As you point out, help is on the way, is what the president said. Again, the big question mark, what form that will take.
Tawheed, are we seeing Iranian officials respond in any way to this? Are we seeing any mobilizations that might indicate they're getting ready for a strike?
Well, actually, so far we haven't received any official reaction to the very recent statements that we heard from the U.S. President Donald Trump. But still, speaking of the broader context, we had the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi yesterday coming out in an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera to say that Tehran is ready for any scenario and the capabilities of the country have been strengthened compared to the previous war, both qualitatively and quantitatively. Also, we've got the Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who was actually among the demonstrators yesterday, and then there was a rally. A pro-state rally in which we've got hundreds of thousands attending. And there he said that in case the United States decides to strike Iran, there are going to be tough repercussions. He said that Iran is going to consider the U.S. military bases and U.S. ships as well as the Israeli territories, quote-unquote, as our legitimate targets. This is one strong message that he sent. Meanwhile, he also said that in case of such an attack, there is a warning for the U.S. allies in the region. On that, he asked them to avoid any miscalculation. The defense minister of the country, as well as the secretary for the Supreme National Security Council of the country, are both echoing the same statement that in case any attack comes from the enemy, there's going to be repercussions, which is going to be painful and severe. All in all, this is a very complicated situation, and we are following to see what comes next.
Kimberly, one part of this statement by Donald Trump that got my attention is where he says to Iranians to save the names of Iranian officials. They'll pay a big price. It sounds like he's thinking of toppling the government. How is that kind of message of getting that intertwined in a Middle Eastern conflict going down with Congress, going down with people?
Well, it's not what the U.S. president campaigned on. And in fact, he said he would try and get the United States out of constant foreign entanglements. But so far, that's not what we've seen from this president. It is unpopular among the American public for further interventions, particularly when it comes to Iran. The most recent poll numbers show 51% of Americans not in favor of military strikes or any sort of military intervention, according to the latest polls. We also know that it's not popular on Capitol Hill, at least with opposition Democrats, for a number of reasons. Number one, they believe that it is not in the interest of the United States to further engage in war around the world, but also that the U.S. president is exceeding his presidential authority, that he needs to speak to Congress. There should be a debate and a vote per the U.S. Constitution prior to any sort of military action. But the administration in the past has justified this as saying it's part of the president's emergency powers. For the most part, we should point out that this is a view along party lines, with Democrats in favor of military strikes, even as the American public signaling something very different.
Kimberly Halkett outside the White House, Tawhid Asadi in Tehran. Thank you both. There's been a flurry of reaction to the situation in Iran. The UK, Italy and Germany have all summoned the Iranian ambassadors over the crackdown on protesters. The European Union and the UK have announced plans to further sanction Iran over the protests, while Russia says threats of new military strikes are categorically unacceptable and condemns interference in Iran's internal affairs. Officials in Qatar say they're working tirelessly to calm the tensions between the US and Iran. Ali Hashim reports from Doha.
Escalation between the United States and Iran and threats of military action are raising concern among regional states. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman said his country is participating in efforts to diffuse tension.
The talks continue, our calls continue. There is no specific effort that I can point to right now, but we are involved in talking to all parties, obviously with our neighbors and our partners in the region to find a diplomatic solution.
The spokesman said that his country supports dialogue to solve this issue, and also called on Israel to implement its part of the deal in Gaza. Ali Hashim, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.